Hare Krishna. We continue reading from teachings of Queen Kunti. We are on prayer 23, which is in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, Text 40. All these cities and villages are flourishing in all respects because the herbs and grains are in abundance, the trees are full of fruits, the rivers are flowing, the hills are full of minerals, and the oceans full of wealth. And this is all due to your glancing over them. So we have been reading the purport by Srila Prabhupada, and we will continue to read. In Bhagavad Gita 9.10, Lord Krishna says, Mayadhyakshena prakritihi suyate sacharacharam. By my supervision, material nature gives birth to all moving and non-moving beings. So we may see that there are so many species of life, so many varieties of life is there. How is this happening? Why? Under whose supervision is it all happening? Krishna is saying all is happening under his supervision. He says that in Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, text 10. He's saying that under my supervision, material nature is providing the bodies for all the living entities, for moving and non-moving beings. There are some living entities that can move and some can't. The word Aksha means eyes. So Akshena indicates that all living entities take birth because of the Lord's glance. There are two kinds of living entities, the moving beings, like insects, animals, and human beings, and the non-moving beings, like trees and plants. In Sanskrit, these two kinds of living entities are called Sthavara Jangama, and they both come forth from material nature. So we may think, oh, the only living beings are the human beings. No, animals are also living beings. Insects are also living beings. These are moving living beings. Similarly, there are non-moving living beings, trees and plants, and they are living beings. There's a soul inside the body. The tree, what we see, the form, there's a soul inside that tree. The plant we see, there's a soul inside that plant. So the body is provided by material nature, but the living entity is coming from who? From Krishna. By his glance, Krishna puts the living entities in this material world. Of course, what comes from material nature is not the life, but the body. The living entities accept particular types of bodies from material nature, just as a child takes its body from its mother. For 10 months, the child's body develops from the blood and nutrients of the mother's body. But the child is a living entity, not matter. It is the living entity that has taken shelter in the womb of the mother, who then supplies the ingredients for that living entity's body. This is nature's way. The mother may not know how from her body another body has been created, but when the body of the child is fit, the child takes birth. So the mother's body it creates the body of the child, but it cannot create the child. It cannot create the soul. The soul is put inside the mother's womb from the semen of the father. The soul is there in the semen of the father. And the mother facilitates the creation of the body. So it is not that the living entity takes birth, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 2.20, na jayate mriyate va. The living entity neither takes birth nor dies. That which does not take birth does not die. Death is meant for that which has been created, and that which has not created has no death. So we say, oh, birthday, it's my birthday. But the birthday is referring to the body. It's to the body, not to the living entity. The soul never takes birth. The soul never dies. The soul is eternal. The Gita says, na jayate mriyate va kadachit. The word kadachit means at any time. At no time does the living entity actually take birth. Although we may see that the child is born Actually, it is not born. Nitya Shasvata Yam Puranaha. The living entity is eternal, Shasvat, always existing and very, very old, Purana. Nahanyate hanyamane sharire. Don't think when the body is destroyed, the living entity will be destroyed. No, the living entity continue to exist. So we say, we see the body of a child and we say, oh yeah, so the child is born. But the soul, it's not that the soul was created at this time. For example, if a child is born today, 6th June 2022. So the birth date is 6 June 2022. But that's not the birth date of the soul. It's the birth date of the body only, not of the soul. The soul is eternal. So there is actually for the soul, there is no birth. And similarly, when this child grows up and at a certain time gives up the body, at that time, the death date is also of the body, not of the soul. The soul is just going to go to another body then. So we are not able to understand that. And we think we are the body. We think we are a product of matter. But no, we are not a product of matter. We are the spirit. This is what Krishna is trying to explain to us in Bhagavad Gita. A scientist friend was asking me, what is the proof of eternity? Krishna says, Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. The soul is not killed when the body is killed. This statement in itself is proof. This type of proof is called Shruti. The proof established that by that which is heard through the disciplic succession from the Supreme. So Srila Prabhupada is saying that one of his scientist friend was asking, what's the proof that the soul is eternal? So Srila Prabhupada is saying the word of God. The word of God is the proof, because spiritual matter, spiritual knowledge is understood by hearing. Hearing from whom? Hearing in the disciplic succession. Hearing from the disciplic succession, which is starting from God himself. Disciplic succession from the Supreme. So the original speaker has to be God. So one form of proof is proof by logic, Nyaya Prasthan. One can get knowledge by logic, arguments, and philosophical research. But another form of proof is Shruti, proof established by hearing from authorities. A third form of proof is Smriti, proof established by statements derived from the Shruti. The Bhagavad Gita and the Puranas are Smriti. The Upanishads are Shruti, and the Vedanta is Nyaya. Of these three, the Shruti Prashthan, or the evidence from the Shruti, is especially important. So here, Prabhupada is saying that how we can get this proof, how we can get knowledge. One is by logic. Not logic, we have our logical intelligence by some argument, doing some research, and that's called Nyaya Prashthan. And another one is when we hear from the disciplic succession. And then the third is Smriti, remembrance. So Smriti is coming from Shruti, is a remembrance of the devotees from the Shruti, from the Vedas. So what is Smriti? The Puranas are Smriti. Puranas, Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is also called Smriti because it is a part of Mahabharata. Mahabharata is spoken about the Lord. So that's why it is Smriti. And then what is Shruti? Shruti is what is spoken by the Lord himself. So that's the Upanishads. And what is Nyaya? Logic, that's Vedanta. So of all these three, the most important is Shruti, that which is heard by hearing. The knowledge which we hear from the Lord coming to us through the disciplic succession. Pratyaksha, the process of receiving knowledge through direct perception, has no value because our senses are all imperfect. So we may say that apart from this, we can get knowledge is by our senses, by our eyes, by our nose, by our hand, touch, by our ears. But that is not considered. Why? Because it's imperfect. Why? Because our senses are imperfect. So that is not even considered as a proof of knowledge, because then it is just, it's not perfect knowledge. It is imperfect knowledge. For example, every day we see the sun to be just like a small disk, perhaps 12 inches in diameter. But in fact, it is 100 times larger than the earth. So what is the value of our direct perception through our eyes? We have so many senses through which we can experience knowledge, the eyes, the ears, the nose, and so on. But because these senses are imperfect, whatever knowledge we get by exercising these senses is also imperfect. Because scientists try to understand things by exercising their imperfect senses, their conclusions are always imperfect. So we can see our eyes, we can't even see the germs near us. There's so many bacteria flying around us. We can't see them. So I will say, oh, there is no bacteria. But then is that proper knowledge? No, it's faulty knowledge. But just because I'm basing it on my eyes, which are faulty. So if I base something on faulty apparatus, the knowledge is going to be faulty. So the knowledge which we can get from our senses is faulty because our senses are faulty. Swarup Damodar, a scientist among our disciples, inquired from a fellow scientist who say that life comes from matter. If I give you the chemicals with which to produce life, will you be able to produce it? The scientist replied, that I do not know. This is imperfect knowledge. If you do not know, then your knowledge is imperfect. Why then have you become a teacher? That is cheating. Our contention is that to become perfect, one must take lessons from the perfect. So if we want to have perfect knowledge, we should hear from the perfect authority. So Prabhupada is giving the example that Swarup Damodar, one of his disciples, he was a scientist. He spoke to one scientist because many scientists say that life comes from matter. So Swarup Damodar Goswami told him, okay, I'm giving you all the chemicals. You produce life. Will you be able to do it? And the scientist is like, I don't know if I can do it. But that goes to show that the knowledge is imperfect. Imperfect. Krishna is perfect. So we take knowledge from him. Krishna says, Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. The soul does not die when the body dies. Therefore, this understanding that the soul is eternal is perfect. So Krishna is perfect. If we take knowledge from Krishna, we are getting perfect knowledge. Krishna says the soul never dies. So we accept this statement and we get perfect knowledge. Oh, the soul never dies. That is perfect knowledge. We may understand it or we may not understand it. That's irrespective. But because we are hearing from the perfect source, that is Krishna, our knowledge is perfect. We may not realize that knowledge. That's all right. But the knowledge is perfect. Yes? So hear from Krishna, from Bhagavad Gita, hear from the devotees of Krishna in the disciplic succession to get perfect knowledge. So we'll stop here for today. If there are no comments or questions. Kunti Maharani ki jai, Shilpa Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta-vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for listening and enjoying.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Shilpa.